day, ladies and gentlemen. It's Eric Coffin. I'm here at the May 2019 edition of the Metal Investor Forum in Vancouver. I'm here with Mike Williams, CEO of Vendetta Mining, VTT, on the venture. Vendetta is a company I've followed for a couple of years, like I think everyone really in the base metal developer space. The market for the equity hasn't been as kind, ironically, as the market has for the metals themselves. Most base metals are actually not trading that badly at all, really. But investor interest seemed to wane a little bit. Mike's had his work cut out for him the last little while, but you've just gotten through a couple of, in my opinion, very important milestones. Arguably one of the most important ones is that you now have 100% of the Pegmont project.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people that bought the stock, including me, are hoping for, as with any junior, an eventual monetization. And I think really of the several avenues that could work for that, as it turned out, I mean, I didn't think it was as big an issue when I started following the stock, but as it turns out, that 100% part that was a roadblock that you had to get past, as it turned out. I mean,
yeah, I would equate that to the market environment we're in, where it's difficult to raise significant capital, and if you do, you've got to be careful with dilution. So we did it in a way with a facility that got us 100%, and I think allows us to advance the project, and then we can deal with the rest later.
And I know you're in the middle of another capital raise, but you've got this 100% out of the way.
Yep.
You got the PEA out of the way. And the question now is, what do you do going forward? I mean, I know there's several things that are going to get going near term. Do you want to just kind of walk through some of that?
Sure. I think one of the key things we can do is, from a corporate point of view, we are in the process of going to list in Australia. One thing I've noticed over the last 5 years, the Canadian markets, TSX and TSX Venture, it's difficult for mining stories. I think, to a lot of people's narrative, the marijuana space has sucked the proverbial air out of the room, certainly with the retail guys, and the institutions haven't been there really for years. It's a different story in Australia. Every Australian has to contribute to a superannuation fund, and you have these big pension funds that then invest that money, and they do like mining, but they want to see it go into ASX companies. Right. So what it does, it creates an environment where you can raise money, there's liquidity, and there's a definite disparity between the valuations of the TSX companies versus the ASX. In our case, for a base metal company, it'd be 2 times, and for our peers, it's 3 and sometimes 5 or maybe even 6. Right. We want to close that gap by listing there, and that's what we intend to do corporately, and at the same time advance the project. One good thing that the PEA showed is we know where the levers of value are. We've largely, in our mind, de-risked the project. We can start bringing value back in, and that's what we'll also do concurrently. And I think if we do those things fundamentally, build it and they will come. Yeah. You start going down the process, and we're already seeing indications that it's an interesting project to a lot of different people for a variety of reasons.
And you're still, I think you mentioned in your presentation that a fairly modest drill program. It's still open. You can still grow it in a couple of areas, and you've also got this issue of hopefully just putting enough diamond drill holes, I guess, on the table to get the engineers who did the resource calculus and the PEA to give you the obvious upgrade that you've had with all these diamond drill holes. They have higher grades on average.
Yeah, well, one of the things we can do, and I'll just address your last point first, on the grade side, we can do that through a study. We drilled 200 diamond drill holes, on average 18% higher. We can bring a study in over the next, let's call it 6 months. That will address that issue, and then that would allow us to bump the grade probably by maybe up to a percentage point. But that goes straight to the bottom line because it doesn't increase cap costs. So that's not insignificant in and of itself. The other things we can do, to your point, is we can do some further drilling. Now we're going to drill on the areas of the ore body that are either in the mine plan or could be brought into the mine plan, because I think if we want to monetize this either through financing or an offtake agreement or someone else, it's best to get the NPV up as high as we can, as quickly as we can, and it's going to be a product of when we go up to Australia, get the valuation higher, then you could do a raise and bring that money in with less dilution than doing it down on the Canadian markets right now, and that's what we intend to do. We're going to do a little bit of work right now, but it's all going to be geared to, okay, how do we add value? Now, this ore body on the exploration front, yeah, it's got a significant amount of blue sky, but I don't think the market's paying for blue sky yet. It's not that type of market. It should pay for value. I'd like to think it should.
Okay, yeah, it's been a bit of a it's been a bit of a curvy road for Vendetta and for many other developers, but as Mike noted, they do have a positive PEA. They've got a fairly short route to actually add to that value quite a bit, and I think the combination of that, picking up the ASX listing, because let's face it, your obvious target market, as you will, is almost certainly going to be an Australian company.
I would think.
That's where the deposit is. So they're an obvious one. Although, and I do know that you're still going down several avenues when it comes to nearer term monetization, if you want to put it that way.
Well,
I mean,
logic would dictate it's going to be a made in Australia story.
Yeah.
Be it us doing an offtake agreement, but I would think if you look at the numbers really truly associated with it, that project will kick off significant cash, will make it very attractive. Now, I think for our shareholders, we've put a base in now, and in our mind, we've de-risked it, and I think other people can see that too. It's just you walk this fine line with having a little bit of improvement, a little bit of help, and we've been facing some serious headwinds with the market, and when that dissipates a little, that coupled with what we can do, I think you've got a significant project.
Yeah, I mean, it's a story that's come a long way. It is largely de-risked. The price is attractive if you're a new shareholder, and I think now that they have 100%, now they've got the PA, a lot of the jigsaw pieces have been put together, and I think although there's a couple of obvious clear development paths to move it forward and increase value, I still think the potential of it being essentially a takeover candidate, but through any of 2 or 3 different methods, is quite a bit higher now that it's being de-risked. So the timing is good to be on this story. Again, that's why I invited them to the Metal Investor Forum, because I think the time's right for people to be on this story. Thanks for coming by and
Thanks for having
updating us,
us.
Mike. Vendetta Mining, VTT on the venture.